Hello there, everybody. Hallo zusammen, and welcome to this German GCSE and iGCSE tutorial. So in this particular video, we're going to cover the writing exam again and focus on general writing exam tips. So this should be useful for every single student. All of you, as you'd all have to take a writing paper for German GCSE or iGCSE. And we're looking at the writing exam overall here. So we're not just looking at one specific part, whether it's translation or shorter or longer writing tasks. Here, we're very much going to cover everything. So, just to introduce myself quickly first, I'm Dhananjay Talwar. I studied modern languages, French and Italian specifically, for my MA degree at the University of Cambridge, graduated back in 2015, so some time ago now. And I've been an educator, mostly a tutor, since that time, for around 10 years at least now. I am really passionate about languages myself. As I'm sure you'll be able to tell, I've learned more than 20 of them myself to different levels, but that includes at least 9 to fluency. German is one of those, of course, which I did for GCSE very successfully first, before then practicing considerably because of my passion with friends. It's something I really love to do, something I will always likely enjoy doing, learning languages. And that's also why I love motivating my students and helping them to reach their language learning goals by giving them useful techniques that I found through my considerable experience. Their goals can vary, but they will often be achieving grades in specific exams like GCSEs or iGCSEs. And in fact, I have already helped more than 500 different students to achieve or exceed their target grade in language GCSE or iGCSE exams while I've been a full-time tutor. I have taught 7 or 8 different languages to GCSE or iGCSE levels so far. And many of those at higher levels too. It's been a very rewarding and enjoyable experience. Okay, but enough about me. Let's go on to the German GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. So this is just a brief overview of the exam boards for GCSE German and iGCSE German. The vast majority of students will do one of these exam boards. And if you are doing one of these at school, it's definitely worthwhile knowing which exam board you are following, because that allows you to tailor your preparation accordingly. As you'll see a bit later on, the exact duration of the writing paper, and indeed the other papers too, can vary from exam board to exam board. And the exact requirements can vary somewhat for German GCSE and iGCSE too. They're not all exactly the same for every exam board. And I'll show you a list of the common tasks that come up in the writing paper. And you'll be able to see that it's not uniform. It's not the same for everyone. So I recommend getting to know what exam board you're following as early as possible, ideally. The good thing, though, is for this video, at least, that we're looking at the writing exam overall. And so this material and whatever I cover and explain here will be useful for all students. It doesn't matter what your specific exam board is. So make sure to carry on watching and to pay attention to all of these important bits of information too. The first of those is the different parts of the German GCSE and iGCSE writing exam. I've just written this out very neatly here in case you're not fully aware of it. There are some parts of the German GCSE and iGCSE writing exam that are almost the same for everybody, regardless of whether you do foundation tier or higher tier or which exact exam board you're following. And those are the shorter writing task and longer writing task. Other parts, these 5 parts written above, can vary from exam board to exam board, and they can also vary depending on whether you're doing foundation tier or higher tier. And those can include a form filling exercise, listing exercise, where you've got to list, say, items or objects related to a specific topic, for instance. Answers, questions that require a short answer in German, perhaps to a specific prompt, for instance, response to a photo, and a mini grammar exercise as well. A lot of these are specific to particular exam boards, and we don't look at any of these 5 parts of the German GCSE or iGCSE writing exam, the first 5 listed here. I'm not going to cover those in these videos because they do vary, and they do tend to be more formulaic and simple in nature too. So they often take a little bit of practice, but once you're used to the format, they can certainly be less challenging than, say, the shorter writing task or the longer writing task, or even the translation. You'll notice that translation is written there at the bottom in brackets, and it says translation from English to German. So not everybody will have to do translation as part of your writing exam, but if you do, then it's highly likely it should really be from English to German. I don't cover that in these videos on the writing exam. I do cover translation separately, though, and that's translation both from English to German and German to English. That's covered in a separate video, which I highly recommend you watching too. And I do go through the shorter writing task in more detail in another video too, and the longer writing task and how I would answer that step by step in a separate video just on each of those. So definitely worth checking those out too if you haven't already. But this time we're going to look at the writing exam overall, and I'm going to give some very valuable tips, hopefully, as to how you can boost your grades. So, first of all, just to highlight the differences too from exam board to exam board, these are lists of the exam duration for GCSE and iGCSE German writing papers. You'll notice that there is variation depending on your exam board. And if you're doing a GCSE German exam board rather than iGCSE, then the duration of the exam varies depending on whether you're doing foundation or higher tier. So I definitely recommend making a note of this. It's useful to know your exam board and if you're doing foundation or higher tier as early as possible. And then you can use practice papers or past papers tailored to that level to prepare, which should be helpful. So make a note of specifically the time of the exam for the exam board and level that you're following. Pearson Edexcel iGCSE is a bit of an outlier because they still have a combined reading and writing paper. So they don't have a paper that's dedicated just to writing. They mix that in with the reading paper as well. And that's why that exam is considerably longer. But do make a note. These are all correct as of November 2025. But do keep abreast of any changes with these durations as well. Okay, on to the top tips now for the German GCSE or iGCSE writing exam. So time management is really important. As a student doing your writing paper, you need to keep track roughly of how much time has gone and how much time is left. You're obviously given a certain number of tasks to complete. The writing tasks, the shorter and longer writing tasks, will usually be the most time consuming. So you need to make sure that you are on track in terms of managing your time to be able to finish all of the questions in time. And another thing that it's really important to factor in is the time taken to check. So don't just aim to finish the questions by the time the exam is over. You've got to make sure that you have enough time to check over everything as well. Normally, I would aim to spend about 10 minutes, even up to 10 minutes checking, because checking can be so valuable and almost everyone will spot mistakes that they can then correct while they check through their own work. Definitely try and include some time for checking as much as you can. And these are things to incorporate as you practice and do past papers too. Memorize key phrases. I mention this a lot, and for good reason, because key phrases can directly boost your grade, particularly in speaking and in writing for language GCSE exams or iGCSE exams. I do have lists of these key phrases for various languages that I've compiled based on my considerable experience as a tutor. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll share my contact details later if you want access to those for free. Key phrases can be memorized even just a day or two before your actual exam. They tend to be phrases that are associated typically with the top grades. And they can directly boost your grade. It doesn't take too long to memorize a bunch of these, say up to between 5 or 10, and then to incorporate them and use them when you're writing or even speaking in your speaking exam. Make sure that you're really clear as possible on the differences between the shorter writing task and longer writing task. They're quite different in nature. They require different exam technique and different styles of writing, different requirements to score highly as well. So I have done separate videos on each of those two tasks, the shorter writing task and the longer writing task. So make sure to watch those fully and to absorb them. And also make sure that you answer every single bullet point and roughly equally. If you're given 5 bullet points, you have to include all of those in your answer. You can't skip over one or two of them. If you do, you'll definitely lose marks as a result. The other thing that you can't do is write, say, 50, 60 words on one bullet point and then just 10 or 15 for the next one. You have to cover them all more or less equally. Otherwise, yeah, you'd be penalized again. So no matter how many bullet points you're given, make sure that you include all of those in your answer. Okay, and that applies for the shorter and longer writing task, by the way. A few more tips on the writing exam. Make sure to stick more or less to the word limits for the writing tasks. Other teachers may say differently, but I would always cover your back and ensure that you don't give examiners any chance to take marks off you. That's what good exam technique really means. So I would stick to about 10% either way. So if you're told to write 100 words for a writing task, I would go between 90 and 110. Give yourself 10% leeway above or below that limit. Sometimes they will indicate a range of acceptable word limits to you. So they might say, for instance, make sure to write between 130 and 150 words. And if that's the case, then I would just make sure that your final word count is within that range. And I would actually sit there and count up the words that you've written, the number of words you've written in the actual exam. I did that and it worked very well for all of my 5 language GCSE exams back in the day. It's time consuming, but it's worth covering your back and making sure that you don't lose marks for these kinds of annoying reasons. And otherwise, you could estimate roughly how many words you fit on a line and how many lines you've written, and use that to estimate the number of words that you've written overall. But I wouldn't hesitate to actually count them individually. Make sure to check your writing thoroughly afterwards. Checking is really important. Planning, writing, and checking is for creative writing, for instance. Those are the 3 different stages. Here, for the shorter writing task, you don't really need to plan. For the longer writing task, some students will still do so. But certainly writing and then checking are both very important. It's not just the written answer that counts. Make sure you give yourself enough time to check fully afterwards as well. Don't translate completely word for word either. If you have translation as part of your writing paper, that is a common mistake. And do check out the video that I made separately on translating, which is both from English to German and German to English, for more tips on that. But translating word for word, so one word at a time, will produce very stilted translations, no matter which direction you're translating in. Practice in exam conditions and using past paper materials. Generally, the best way to revise, particularly as you get closer and closer to your exams, your final exams, is to try and recreate that exam environment as closely as possible, and to recreate the exact conditions of the exam, how it will be on the day, as closely as you can. Okay, a few more tips before we launch into our quiz. So make sure you're aware of the exam format for your exam board. As mentioned, they do vary. Pearson edXL iGCSE, for example, still has a combined reading and writing paper. So you need to be aware of those differences, or at least of what the exam is going to be like for you. Make sure you're aware of the word counts for your exam board. Generally, people will get to know those closer to the exam time, but it can still definitely be beneficial to know exactly how many words you would have to write for your shorter and your longer writing task. And then you can adjust accordingly as you practice as well. If you can't remember a specific word in German, just try to use a synonym. This is something that actually really commonly comes up for students when they're translating, even when they're writing, of course, too. They may be racking their brains. They may forget how to say one specific German word. If that does happen to you, and it often does in the exam too, try not to get too flustered. Try not to panic. Obviously, easier said than done, but try and find ways of getting around that instead. If you don't know one particular word, it's usually not the end of the world, and you could often find a synonym to use instead, or a way of paraphrasing or rephrasing what it is that you were originally going to say to convey the same meaning. And as long as it's still grammatically correct in German, and you've still communicated the same meaning, you shouldn't be penalized in translation or writing. And last, but of course not least, as I always say, memorize high-scoring structures. I do have some really good examples and lists of these. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you want to gain access to those for free. Yeah, but high scoring structures can make a really big difference regardless of what your target grade is. Okay, now, as mentioned, there's a brief quiz, just a quick quiz to check your understanding and knowledge of the writing task or the writing paper overall for German GCSE or iGCSE. So, one question at a time. There are four of them here. Question number one: why is checking your work thoroughly so important? Yeah, checking is definitely not something to overlook, and I would definitely get into the habit of doing that fully while you practice and do past papers as well. But this question is asking why exactly it is so important. Okay, I think that's enough thinking time. So I'm going to reveal the answer now. So the answer is students will often make mistakes while writing. It's quite natural. You're writing in German. It's not the student's first language, of course, normally. But while they check through their works, they are often able to spot and correct mistakes while they check, which will directly result in an increase in their marks. Yeah, so there's a big correlation between checking and checking thoroughly and the final mark as well, both for the shorter and longer writing task, even for translation and other parts of the paper as well. So not something to overlook. Number two, then, true or false? As a student, you need to track your time in the writing exam. So this is something I did mention near the start. Let me give you the answer then. This one is definitely true. Try and make sure you've always got some idea of how much time's already gone and how much time is left to answer the remaining questions in the exam. Ideally, you need to be aware so that you know whether you need to speed up to be able to get through all the questions and finish checking within the time, or if you can actually afford to take it even slightly slower if you want to, just to avoid making mistakes. But it's always useful to know the time that's gone and the time that's left, and also to know how many questions remain in the exam. Something that can take practice. Question number three is also true or false. You cannot predict exactly which topics your writing tasks are going to be based on in the writing exam. So every writing task will be based on a specific topic area for your exam board. So are you able to predict which topics will come up or not? Okay, let me give you the answer for this. This one is true, as in you cannot predict exactly which topics your writing tasks are going to be based on in the writing exam. That is fundamentally unpredictable. And for that reason, it is obviously really important to revise vocab across all of the topic areas for your exam board. Quizlet is often a really good resource for that. There are other ones out there too. But yeah, make sure that you don't skip certain topic areas because you don't know which ones will come up in your writing exam. And last of all, question number 4. What should you do if you can't remember a specific word that you want to use while writing in German? While writing, potentially even translating into German as well, you might encounter the same issue. I did mention this towards the end. A few seconds to think. Okay, now let me show the answer. So the best thing to do is to get around it by using a synonym, so another word that has a similar or even identical meaning, or just try and express the same concept or idea in a different way. And the key is really to not spend too much time on one individual word, unless it's worth a lot of marks or it's extremely valuable or important for your writing or translation. Otherwise, I would try not to rack your brains for too long just on one word or one individual phrase. Perhaps try and find a different way to express the same thing. Okay, if you've got questions on any of this at all, or if you'd like to know about more personalized help, which I do provide as well, then this is how to get in touch. You can contact me by email, through Facebook, or Instagram. And there are my contact details. Again, my Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn handles. Don't hesitate to follow me on these platforms. I am very active on each of those platforms, currently Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, posting a lot about my love of languages. It's natural for me to do that. And encouraging people to learn languages while talking a lot about the tools and exciting ways to do so as well. I do also post about GCSE and iGCSE exams. how you can maximize your revision. Yeah, create revision plans and go into the exams feeling as confident as possible too. And I do have many free resources, some of which I mentioned earlier on, available too for many languages. These are just a few examples. Yeah, including key phrases and quite a lot more. So don't hesitate to reach out at all if you'd like access to any of those.